Good afternoon. I'm Leah Garrett, Vice President of Development and Communications for Community of Hope. Welcome to Conversations of Hope. Today is the final of a three-part webinar series that communicates our bold vision. This Conversations of Hope was designed to share our new strategic plan and some of its most exciting initiatives. Today's session will focus on our approach to maternal and child health care and our vision for healthy moms and healthy babies in Washington, D.C. Today's session is sponsored by a generous and faithful partner of Community of Hope, CareFirst Blue Cross Blue Shield, who has been a part of our maternal and child health work for many years. Thank you, CareFirst. We are so excited today to see our many funding partners, donors, and volunteers who've signed up for this call. We have about 65 people who have RSVP'd. Today, we're grateful for the many supporters who have helped us over the path of the last 40 years, as well as who have helped us through this challenging year of 2020. Just a few notes about this platform. We are in a Zoom webinar format. This means that I and the other panelists and guests cannot see your videos, and you'll remain muted throughout. We are recording this webinar and we'll share a link with you after the event if you want to share it or to rewatch it. Our program today includes introductions, a organizational overview from Kelly Sweeney McShane, and conversations with our two frontline staff members. We have designed this to be interactive. We will be having a question and answer session at the end, and we encourage you to utilize the Q&A feature there at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions. We look forward to the next hour together. Thank you for joining us today. Now I would like to introduce Kelly Sweeney McShane, our President and CEO, who has led Community of Hope boldly through the last 20 years and extra boldly through this interesting year. Thank you and welcome, Kelly.
Community of Hope's mission is to improve health and end family homelessness to make Washington, D.C. more equitable. As you can see from this map, Community of Hope is working throughout the District of Columbia with about 350 staff. We have 9 locations and in 2019 worked with over 16,000 people. The red dots show where our locations are located throughout the city, and the purple shading shows where our patients live, primarily in the Ward 1 corridor, where Community of Hope was born 40 years ago, as well in Wards 5, 7, and 8. And this map in particular, as you will see, the yellow dots show where our pregnant and prenatal patients are as we continue to focus on maternal and child health. We have not skipped a beat in moving forward with our strategic plan and our goals. So I'd like to provide you a brief overview of what those strategic goals are and how we've been moving forward. Our first goal is to improve health and eliminate inequities in health outcomes in under-resourced communities in Washington, D.C. Those health inequities have become even more clear during this pandemic. We continue to focus on providing access to medical care, to dental care, and to what we call emotional wellness services, and do it in a way that creates better health outcomes, ensures patient satisfaction, and builds on trusting relationships with our patients. For the first 6 months of 2020, we saw over 8,500 patients in just over 24,000 visits. We moved quickly to provide a lot of our services via telehealth and are now bringing people back more in person to make sure we're providing the needed in-person care, including for people with chronic disease, for pregnant patients, as well as for immunizations. We've also expanded our community-based COVID testing and are keeping an eye right now on the current and recent surge to see how we can adjust our plans. Along with our access and primary care services, we decided we really wanted to expand our focus in 2 particular areas. The first one is to continue to grow our emotional wellness supports, which again is more important than ever now with COVID, as well as trying to make sure it is integrated into all of our care. The second area where we are focusing is on our maternal and child health programs, and I'm really excited for you to have an opportunity to learn more about a robust suite of services. But as part of that maternal and child care and as part of our strategic plan, a key area where I've been spending a lot of time is relocating and expanding our family health and birth location, which is in Northeast DC. As you can see from the slide on the upper left-hand side is our current building where we operate, which is part of the Developing Family Center. And we've been grateful to the support of the Developing Family Center for many years. But unfortunately, the property has been sold and Community of Hope needs to move out of that property. So we purchased the property about 1.5 miles away, and this is the picture of the lower left-hand building, where we can relocate while still continuing to serve the Ward 5 community. On the right-hand side, you see an image of what the property will look like when it's completed. We'll be able to more than double our space, maintain the only freestanding birth center in the District of Columbia, expand our primary care, expand our emotional wellness services, add a small pharmacy, and then be able to really have some additional space for partnership and expanded work. We are on target to begin construction in January and finish in December of 2021. If anyone would like to talk to me more about this project or is interested in supporting it financially, I would love to have those conversations. So all of that is our first goal around improving health. Our second strategic goal is to end homelessness for families in Washington, D.C. So what does that mean? For Community of Hope, that means that we're doing everything from preventing families from becoming homeless in the first place, to then providing safe and caring and dignified short-term shelter, to then helping families move as quickly as possible into their own homes. Community of Hope served almost 840 families in the first 6 months of 2020, which represents about 1,600 children. During this pandemic, we continue to provide short-term shelter. We continue to help families move into their own apartments and support them in their apartments, as well as continue to help them find jobs. We're also keeping an eye on the impact of COVID. We have not seen a spike yet in homelessness, but predict that that will likely happen once the end comes to the moratorium on evictions that's going on right now. Our third goal is our new goal, and that is to innovate, collaborate, and integrate in order to improve well-being for families and communities. We've got a couple of key initiatives that we've been moving forward with during this time. One of them is to better integrate our health services into our housing programs. And we've started that by first having a perinatal care coordinator who is embedded within our health team and maternal and child health team, but working with families who are pregnant and experiencing homelessness. And the second initiative in this area is to have a therapist embedded within our short-term family housing services to really support families who are experiencing homelessness. We also have launched a new program to support parents who are 18 to 24 years old, who have children and are experiencing homelessness, to really focus on that age group and see how we can better support young adults and young parents. Both of these two initiatives were featured in the last 2 weeks' Conversations of Hope and will be posted shortly. So I encourage you to go back and listen to that if you want to learn more about those. And then last but not least is a new initiative. We're working on place-based strategies. We launched the Bellevue Family Success Center and are really focusing on the community and community needs around that location, including around emotional wellness and really uplifting the voices of our neighbors. And last but not least, our fourth goal is to be a strong and sustainable organization, ensuring that we have the people, the resources, and the expertise we need to advance our work. We have an amazingly talented and diverse staff, some of whom you'll hear about today. We have a great board of directors and volunteers, some of whom are on the call today, and strong supporters from our government partners, foundations, individuals, and make all of this work possible. I particularly want to thank some of our supporters of our maternal and child health work, Care First, the Clark Foundation, Developing Family Center, and MedStar Health as some very important partners. So with that overview of our strategic plan and where we are, I want to move into today's conversation. As I noted, Community of Hope has named maternal and child health as a key priority of ours for the next 5 years. This is a really exciting time at Community of Hope as we scale and innovate and have much more robust services. But it's also a very good time in the city because there's a lot of interest and initiative around this moment. And we want to make sure that we really take advantage of this moment and the partnerships that are in place. A few that I just want to name is the Clark Foundation Parent and Child Initiative. And the Clark Foundation is investing about $93 million to improve maternal and child health, focusing on 3 different hospitals and multiple community-based organizations and including Community of Hope. We are also pleased to partner with MedStar, Safe Babies and Safe Moms initiatives, and you'll learn a little bit more about some of what's happening there. And Mayor Bowser has made maternal and child health a priority, as evidenced through the Maternal and Child Health Summit, our partnership with Thrive by 5 DC, and some initiatives through DC Health, including the Calling All Sectors initiative. It's really critical to me that we use this momentum and this time to effectuate real change and not just talk about the disparities, but really make that change. It's also critical that we evaluate and figure out how to document effectiveness of work so that we can move this into work that is not just grant funded and goes up and down with grants, but deeply embedded in our financial systems and funding systems so that we can continue this work going. I also want to emphasize we are still learning. We are growing in our work. We're excited to share what we're doing so far and look forward to continued partnerships and conversations as we all learn together. So with that, I want to bring in Ebony Marcelle, who is our wonderful Director of Midwifery at Community of Hope, and really just a national leader about talking about these issues. So Ebony, welcome and thanks for being with here today for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Ebony, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Okay, let's talk, and we have some slides we're going to show, thanks to Optum, who has helped through pro bono support to develop these. Let's talk about why there are such inequities in health outcomes for mothers and children in the District of Columbia. Talk us through that.
Sure. So DC, I like to commonly call it the tale of two cities, and it makes a nice pretty diamond. And so to kind of give a bigger, broader overview on some of the big points we want to focus on, I'm going to first talk about the top half of the diamond, and then I'll talk about the bottom half of the diamond. So and the bottom half, of course, is east of the river. So up top, we have 4 hospitals. We have one on the border, all with labor and delivery, lots and lots of healthy food choices, stores, grocery stores. There's access to specialists, sonography, maternal fetal medicine, transportation, lots of different stops and options. And that composes about 63% of the residents of DC. And of that, 52 are representing Black and Latino families. And then of those families, about 5% of the families have children that live in poverty. So if we go to the next slide. Now let's talk about where we are. So we have one hospital near the border with labor and delivery, but outside of that, we really don't have labor and delivery services east of the river. Do not have the same number of grocery stores and also types of grocery stores. There's no Trader Joe's, there's no Whole Foods. There's little or no access to specialty for our patients who need to have sonograms or see high-risk doctors. They have to cross over the river. And that points out to the long transportation. So on average, it's about 2.5 hours a lot of times to get from Ward 8 to get to their specialist or their appointment in Northwest. And of this part of the city, it makes about 37% of DC's residents, but 81% of that 37 are Black and Latino, and about 17%, which is triple what I reported for the top half, are children living in poverty. And so as we have these greater conversations about improving and changing disparities, we have to talk about weathering factors and point blank racism and how that affects health and long-standing institutionalized and systematic racism. So how does that shake out? And it puts bias in our healthcare systems. A lot of our community report negative experiences when they are engaging in healthcare systems. And if they didn't, maybe a family member or peer. And these are also communities with high rates of violence and a lot of other factors related to stress, socioeconomic, intimate partner violence, trauma. And so here we also see 5 times more likely for Black infants have infant mortality, and then definitely higher numbers of maternal mortality. And so this one little skinny river divides us, but it's a huge difference between the 2 areas.
And I really like this because I think it shows the complicatedness of it. There's not sort of one cause, but a whole lot of factors, including fragmented care and historic racism that ties into this. And also that this map really, if you can remember from the beginning, looks very similar to where Community of Hope is working across the city in the key areas. So Ebony, despite all of this, we know that the families we work with are incredibly resilient. And can you just talk a little bit about a family that you've worked with that really reflects that?
Sure. So for me, one of my favorite parts about working for this organization and one of the services that we provide is out of hospital birth. In this country, there are about 350 birth centers, and out of those 350, only about 10 accept Medicaid. So I am proud that not only do we offer this opportunity for families who most of the time financially will not be able to experience it, but out of hospital birth can be very transformative. And one of my best examples, we have a mom who definitely had a first time baby in the hospital with, quote unquote, standard care, and then was so empowered through her birth center experience and came back for another round. So she had both her last few babies in the birth center and has become pretty much a champion in the Community Award 5, always talking about, how we essentially really changed her life, giving her this experience and all the progression she has made.
Thanks. I think that's a great story. And that person, I believe, is also serving on Community of Hope's board of directors. So she can bring a lot of that experience and passion to the work as well. So thanks for sharing that. So I'd like to move on to Abayea Pelt, who's our Director of Maternal and Child Health, and have her join us as well. Welcome, Abayea.
Hello.
So Abayea, tell us a little bit for you as well, families that we've worked with that show those resiliencies and strengths. Share a story for us.
Sure. So what comes to mind is a family that was in our home visiting program. And with home visiting, it starts with an in-depth assessment where we get to know the family, we get to know what their stressors are, what protective factors are present in their lives. And as part of that initial assessment, this particular mom who had just given birth shared that, sometimes she felt like she wanted to cut the baby off. That was the phrase that she used. And so, with that information, recognize that, perhaps there's some trauma history there, that there are some factors that are getting in the way of feeling those bonding, feelings that help to form those early attachments that babies have for their parents. And there was a high level of concern, frankly. But after some time in the home visiting program and getting regular visits, that began to change. And that was due to getting information and really just having time with another person who was prepared to listen and be present, get the mom connected to behavioral health services. And after a time, that really shifted. And she was able to say that she was falling in love with her baby. And it was a great, just demonstration that with the kind of support and information and intervention, things can change.
Thank you, Abayea. I love that, that sense of the trust and the bonding and falling in love. So you mentioned a couple things that Community of Hope does. So Ebony talked a little bit about the challenges and the obstacles, but let's talk a little bit about the solutions and how Community of Hope is working very tangibly to address those solutions with really the family at the heart of everything that we do. Abayea, if you could talk us through all the different things that we do.
Absolutely. So I'm going to be following this graphic that you all can see, and you can, as Kelly said, the heart and where we start is with the family, with our patients who are receiving care with us. That's prenatal care, pediatric care, care for the entire family, and also emotional wellness services, behavioral health services. And so for a patient who's coming to us for prenatal care, they are getting care with our midwifery team headed by Ebony. So I'm starting at the top of the graphic. I'm going to go around like a clock, or one of our family practitioners. And then those prenatal visits are, one-on-one at first. And then later in the pregnancy, around the 20th week, we invite our patients to start attending what are called centering pregnancy sessions. And that is an evidence-based group model of prenatal care. Throughout all of this, our patients who are eligible, Medicaid eligible, receive support from one of our perinatal care coordination specialists. And when I say perinatal, I'm talking about the prenatal period and the postpartum period together. And so our perinatal care coordinators, or PCCs, are there at the start of the pregnancy when prenatal care is established, and they continue through the postpartum period. And so then our patients deliver with our midwives. Our midwives have privileges at Washington Hospital Center, as well as being able to deliver at the birth center. We have 2 doulas as well on our team. And then we have transportation services. So this is new to Community of Hope, but we are partnering with Uber Health and the Sergo Foundation to bring transportation services that are flexible and meet the needs of our patients that we're able to arrange for ourselves. And then through our partnership with MedStar and our Safe Baby, Safe Moms program, we are bringing on-site sonography into our programming soon, as well as expanding our maternal fetal medicine program and offerings to patients as well. And then again, our medical care includes pediatric care for babies. We are hiring a full-time lactation consultant, lactation educator who will provide breastfeeding support and education. We have our early childhood home visiting program, which I mentioned before. And then we're connecting our patients to baby items and community resources throughout the entire time that they're with us.
Thanks, Abayea. And again, thanks to Optum for helping us develop this graphic, because I really like the concept of all the different things that we're offering that families want as they want it or as they need. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into a couple of these items. And if Ebony comes back, I'm going to have a couple questions for Ebony and then for Abayea, and then we're going to answer, open up for general questions as well. So Ebony, just to get started with you, as you know, I had both of my babies at a birth center with midwives, and one is now studying to be a midwife. So talk to those who don't know as much about midwifery. What is the magic of midwifery? What's the power there?
We actually have magic. I'm just kidding. Midwifery model of care and why it's so important is because the philosophy really, really supports low intervention, but really it's relationship-based care. And when dealing with, families who have previous poor experiences or distrust with most systems, and especially entering medical systems, it's really helpful to provide care in this model to really, really be patient-centered and supportive during this transition in their lives. And so definitely, I think I'm biased. Midwives, of course, are magical, but we also have research behind us to show lower C-section rates, better outcomes, and better maternal satisfaction.
Every time I talk to someone who's had a patient at the birth center, they're like, "Is Ebony or the different midwives?" It's definitely a family. So you talked a little bit about weathering.
Yes.
And the question that I feel like always comes up is, why is it Black women, regardless of income, have poor outcomes? Could you just dig a little bit deeper into that?
Sure. So weathering is really stemmed from research looking at the effects of chronic stress. And in order to have the conversation about chronic stress, which really moves beyond socioeconomic, we have to talk about racism and what it is to experience racism and racism's effects on health. There's tons of research looking at how Black women are aging faster, have higher rates of vascular diseases, and challenges in childbirth. And I really, really want to point out that race is a social construct. We're talking about racism. So it's not race that's a risk factor, it's racism that's a risk factor.
Thank you. And something that's been around for hundreds of years and is going to be hard to change, but it's going to be really, really important to work on. As we talk about evidence-based models, because that's something that we've also really embraced, can you talk about what is centering pregnancy, which is an evidence-based model, and how important is that? What's the magic behind centering?
Sure. So Centering Pregnancy was created by a midwife decades ago, and the reason why it's so impactful is because that also has a ton of research showing reduced reduced numbers in low birth weight and also preterm. But I also like to acknowledge the fact that it's a program that's adaptable for what you need in the community that you're serving. And so it really, really has been a way for us to be provide a lot of support. We have centering families that are still friends after 5-6 years after they met in centering groups. And it's a way for us to give them, empower them, provide education, introduce them. If you may say, I like the nutrition part, but it's just an overall way to help with this transition in their life that's, again, more focused on educating them and shared decision making.
And there's some focus groups we've been doing with pregnant patients who also talk about, especially with COVID, especially being remote, the importance of that social connectedness during this really important time of people's lives. So thank you. So Abayea, as we talk about evidence-based practices, can you talk a little bit more about home visiting, what models we use, again, why they're so important as being part of the suite of services that we offer?
Sure. So we have two home visiting models that we are implementing at Community of Hope. One is the Healthy Families America model, and the other is Parents as Teachers. Parents as Teachers, as the name implies, has a heavy emphasis on preparing for school readiness. And what we know is that being ready for kindergarten and first grade really starts way earlier. It starts in the period of 0 to 3, and really even before that, during pregnancy itself. And so as a model, Parents as Teachers uses an evidence-based curriculum. Families in both of our home visiting programs receive services in the place that they're most comfortable. And so usually that's the home, sometimes it isn't. And if it isn't, we adjust and we're able to do the home visits or the visits at a library or in a shelter, wherever the family is. And it's really about that family support worker coming alongside of the family, getting an understanding of what's important to them, what goals they have, and supporting them with reaching those goals, and also providing information about milestones for their children, activities that support child development. And so that's also true for our Healthy Families America model. But the focus with Healthy Families America is really on infant brain development. It's actually a infant mental health approach that's used with Healthy Families America, and recognizing that between 0 and 3, the architecture of a child's brain is developing. 85% of brain development happens between the age of 0 to 3. And so that what happens during that early childhood phase really shapes what will occur, or the way that that child will be able to respond in a classroom, the way that they will be able to form relationships with other people. And so the focus with HFA, or Healthy Families America, is heavily on attachment, parent-child bonding, and understanding brain development, and presenting that information in a way that parents can understand and incorporate using activities to support their child's development.
And again, we're looking both from the pregnancy all the way up to age 3 for whatever's needed, which I think is unique in a lot of different ways. The other part that I think is really core to the work is the perinatal care navigator. And I think we've had maybe 2 for the almost 700 families we've been working with, and through funding from MedStar, that we'll be able to increase that number and reduce some of the ratios. So talk a little bit about the work of the perinatal care navigator as well, care coordinator.
Sure. So our perinatal care coordinators start engaging with patients when they establish their prenatal care with us. They have a conversation during that new OB appointment. And then using different tools, they get an understanding of what's going on for that family, what particular needs there might be, what are some of the risk factors that might be present, and also some of the strengths that are present for that family as well. And based on that initial conversation and intake, we then plan to engage with that patient regularly over the course of that pregnancy. And that can be supporting them with making their prenatal appointments. We are very much engaged and integrated with the midwifery team and working with their providers so that when things arise, we can be of assistance in that, whether that's providing a resource or helping them to get a specialty appointment that they might need. And we're really following them through the postpartum period for months after. So for us, postpartum doesn't end at 6 weeks. We're engaging with patients into 6 months, even sometimes a year after that period. With the perinatal care coordinator continuing to check in and follow up with them. And then the big part that the perinatal care coordinators are helping us to do is ensure that when a patient has a positive screening for depression, either in the prenatal period or postpartum period, that we're getting them connected to behavioral health and counseling services as they need or want to engage with, and recognize that so much is changing for someone who is pregnant, and that can impact your emotional wellness. And so that's a support that we're able to engage them to get what they need.
And that's where I love that we're able to integrate so much of our work in a nice way. And, you know, I've also often thought how fragmented the system is. So someone who's pregnant, you've got 9 months, you think this would make it very easy, but because there's so much fragmentation, that's why those care coordinators are really, really important. So I'm happy we're able to expand that. We do have one question in the chat, and then I invite other people to add some questions. And this is about how we're addressing healthy food access. And I know we've got a couple of things going on there. It didn't make it into the wheel, but I think it might at some point here. And Abayea, maybe you want to start with that, and then I encourage other people to start putting some questions into either the chat or the Q&A function.
Sure. So with the perinatal care coordinators and also our home visitors, we are regularly engaging with families about what needs they have for referrals to community resources. And so we are able to make referrals to, you know, using the Hunger Help Hotline and other resources that exist in the community, so that our patients and program participants can get the food resources that they need. And then in addition, we are always connecting our families to WIC services if they're eligible, which provides nutritional support, as well as SNAP benefits if that is something that they qualify for as well. And so that's something that we do on a regular basis, but the PCC, or the perinatal care coordinator or home visitor, is there also when crisis arises or food shortage arises. They're also there to support parents if they're falling short, you know, and not making it to the next, you know, reload on their EBT if they're on SNAP benefits, how they can manage and, you know, increase their income. If that's a goal that they have in their family, that's something that the perinatal care coordinator or home visitor can help with as well.
And I would just add, we've been also working on some partnerships, including with Martha's Table and Capital Area Food Bank. Unfortunately, some of the COVID has slowed some of those down, but I think that's very much a part of the vision to make sure that there's healthy food available, which we know is so incredibly important. So I think with that, I'm going to hand this over to Leah, who's going to help navigate through question and answers.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your patience with us with our tech issues at the beginning. That was no fun. We do want to welcome your questions. You're welcome to put those in the chat if those are easiest for you, or utilizing the Q&A feature. We'll wait just a moment to get some of those coming in. In the meantime, we'll share with you, our guests some of the questions that have been coming up along the way as we've had these kinds of conversations. So I wonder if the term weathering has come up in several conversations this week. And as we put this together, we really thought about all of these factors that our families are experiencing. Ebony, would you talk a little bit more about weathering, where the term comes from, some of the context around that?
Sure. So it's really talking about research, looking at, and the best way to do it for folks who are not in the medical community, I like to kind of create a better kind of picture of it, is everyone has the ability, we call it fight or flight, to where if we're being chased, we have to jump out of a window, we have to have superhuman strength for a second. A lot of extra hormones are kind of flushed through to give us the ability to perform those actions. And so Black women dealing with chronic stress, they're in chronic fight or flight. And so instead of using this for only emergencies, they're experiencing this all the time. And so that it creates larger rates of cortisol, for example. There's lots of research looking at the effects of high rates of cortisol, vascular damage. That's why you're seeing the higher rates of hypertension, diabetes, abdominal fat. And so it's all pretty much connected to just the flood of those stress hormones constantly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and talking through that. We have another question that has come in around perinatal care coordination. And I would love for Abayea to chime in, talk a little bit more about when we start, when we finish, what does it actually, if we can flesh it out as well, what does it look like and how does it change in the course of the period that we're working with those moms? Oh, and you're on mute.
Thank you. So as Kelly mentioned, for a long time, we had just two perinatal care coordinators, one for prenatal and one for postpartum. And then, a decision was made, that recognized that, this great relationship is built in the prenatal period, that it's not a great, approach to then have them work with someone else postpartum. So that's why we moved to this being a role that encompasses both sides of the birth. And so with one of our models that we're implementing, which is Healthy Start, the focus is on engaging prenatally and that engagement extending until baby turns 18 months old. So that's a unique approach that we are working with this family, and the Healthy Start approach also includes the father or partner that's involved in the family as well with the patient. So we're working with the family until baby turns 18 months old. One of our goals is to get the family connected to an early childhood program, whether that's home visiting or early Head Start, and that we are seeing the family through into, the next phase.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, outside of Healthy Start, the perinatal care coordinators work with the family until the baby turns 6 months old. But again, we're doing, a transition plan that connects them to other services that they might need, whether that's our women's health services that we have here at Community of Hope, or home visiting services if they'd like to continue getting that type of support.
Great, thank you. We are facing big challenges, and one question I was hoping that you would each be willing to answer as well is, what are some of the barriers that you experience in your roles to achieving the success that you need to achieve? And then also, what's motivating you to keep overcoming those? Why don't we start with Ebony on that one, then we'll go to Abayea. Sorry about that.
Barriers. I will say that I am really lucky that I work for an organization like Community of Hope that has been very supportive with pretty much my off the cuff textbook, non-textbook ways and thoughts on how to care uniquely for this population. So what you do see in a lot of larger institutions is they're not willing to try new things. They're very stuck into what has always happened, and it's not always very patient-centered, and it's not usually culturally aware. And so I think what I'm really facing is, here I'm having a lot of, joy and happiness and success, kind of really creating and tailoring, with a team, great optimal care to care for this population that's suffering from disparities, but still having to deal with the larger, broader systems and issues. We still have MCOs. Hospitals that don't take all the MCOs, like we're trying to work on it, but just think about what level of stress that adds when you can't go to a particular hospital because of your insurance. Let's talk about just foundationally the bias that exists in medical care and trying to address that, and about how a lot of our systems are inherently punitive and not patient-centered. And so those are a lot of the barriers that I'm kind of working with, trying to help families navigate and still enjoy this beautiful transition. And what keeps me going, I really love being a midwife. I really love being a Black woman, and and also having the opportunity to work with more Black midwives, when in a country that only 6% of the profession has Black midwives. Having the opportunity to work with predominantly Black midwifery staff is incredible, and it's really helpful for our patients, and lots of newer research showing appreciation for cultural congruency, having the opportunity to get care from someone that looks like you.
Awesome. Thank you. Abayea, challenges and questions, or motivations. Yeah.
I would say sometimes, or one of the bigger challenges when we are trying to offer and engage our patients and participants in these services that are evidence-based, that we know would be beneficial to any parent or any person who is welcoming a baby into their family, that there are so many outside stressors, and a lot of times they're centered around things that we are limited in our ability to impact. For example, housing stressors. So often, we're on the health side of Community of Hope, but we're also trying to help our patients navigate housing, insecurity. And, we're not always equipped, because we are on the health side of things. We can make referrals, of course. We can come alongside the family, help them when they're having appointments related to housing, but that is often a challenge. And just thinking about trying to get a parent who is facing homelessness excited about school readiness 5-6 years from now. You can't, you really have to meet them where they are, and you really have to support them with what their current situation and stressors are, and which is what we attempt to do. But sometimes participants don't get the full benefit of our programs because right in that moment they're not able to engage, which is completely understandable. And as far as motivation, I'm a lifelong resident of DC. I'm a 4th generation Washingtonian, so I am very invested in this city as it continues to change. And I can see the impact that it is having on my community and my folks, my people. And so I am just really grateful to be a part of programming that helps to sustain families. And anything that we can do to help people who are from this community to continue to call this home is something that I want to be a part of. So that's my main motivation.
And we all use the hand clapping feature that you all have for reactions, I think, down there to say yes. Yes, yes, yes. This needs to be a city that's available and accessible and home to all. A couple of other comments are coming in. I'm going to try to roll through these. Thank you all for being a very engaged audience. So we have a comment coming in from Julia, and I do want to read it. I appreciate it so much. Thank you all. I continue to be very impressed with everything that you're doing. I hope in the midst of so much meaningful work, especially during COVID and the country's reckoning with racial injustice, I hope your amazing team is taking care of yourselves. Thank you for recognizing, Julia, the challenges with self-care and the way that we're doing that. Actually, I think I'm going to pass it to Kelly real quick and talk. Kelly, would you talk about just a couple of the things that we've been doing as a staff to manage self-care? There's been a few things.
Yeah, and I think we're all very aware of that, myself included. Just last week, we did a great training through the WEN Center on vicarious trauma, about what is vicarious trauma and how it impacts us. And part of it was also coming up with our own menu of how self-care, including desserts and appetizers and family meals. And I know for me, it was really helpful, and then shared in small groups what we're all doing and how do we share some of that. So that's been really important. We've at different times offered daily meditation for those who want to participate. We did some yoga last week while we were all waiting for the election results. We did a very powerful Juneteenth celebration put on by staff. So we think we're really trying to keep reminding ourselves to keep taking care of ourselves and supporting each other in that as well. And I would just add, I mean, I'm just always so motivated by our awesome, inspiring staff. I mean, and Ebony and Abayea are fantastic examples of it, but just have a great overall staff, both at leadership levels as well at the front line, who are just really committed to our mission and to making sure we're very patient and family centered.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Can I add one more thing, Leah?
Yeah.
Because Kelly won't say it, but another thing that's really awesome and unique, especially with Kelly's role, is she sends out a weekly email that is extremely just really helpful and inspiring, and always able to talk about kind of what's going on and not sugarcoat it, which I think a lot of the staff really, really appreciate her weekly Friday emails as we survive through the pandemic.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ebony. Gotta work on the one for today.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We have a question here, and it says, being a pregnant Black mom during a pandemic is scary. What is COH and the midwives doing to make the overall journey and the experience of delivery a good one? And I want to direct that question to Ebony, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I think we're doing a couple of things. The first thing is we have really tried to maintain the safety that's needed for COVID, but also acknowledge the fact that, we need to see our moms. And so we probably are seeing our moms a little bit more frequently. And the midwives actually expanded their schedule a little bit earlier than probably some other places in order to make sure that we're seeing moms in person. Because while telehealth is awesome, it's not enough and doesn't really always provide the impact that we need to see. Another thing that we're doing is we're letting partners come to appointments. A lot of women, especially in the beginning of COVID, really, really talked about how horrible it was to go to appointments by themselves. And while we can't fix everything, they still have to go to sonograms by themselves, still limitations at the birth, having the opportunity to have the partner come with them the visit has been really, really helpful. Another thing that we're doing is we're doing virtual centering. So we had to stop doing in-person centering, of course, because of COVID, not having large gatherings, but the virtual, we restarted virtual centering in July, and it's awesome. It's, even though I teased my team and I said, look, if we could do Zoom baby showers and Zoom weddings, we can absolutely do Zoom centering. And it's been really, really great. to still, have moms support each other, because peer support is way more valuable than people really, really realize. And then at the birth, like, we are doing our best to champion support for our moms at their delivery. And just, again, we have a whole host of passionate midwives who love birth. So I feel like we make every birth a fun time if we can. But I think we're doing it.
Awesome. Awesome. We're really meeting our patients where they're at, as expressed before, and I think that's so important. We have another comment and then a question. I think we'll start with the question, then go to the comment, and then I think we'll wrap up here in just a moment. But Abayea, I want to direct this one to you. Do you have any plans to continue partnerships with infant and child daycare?
Sure. So we are actually in the midst of launching a new facet of our partnership with Martha's Table. Community of Hope is co-located with Martha's Table at the Commons in Ward 8. And so we have a program where we are going to be it's called Baby and Me. And we are going to be working together to provide perinatal care coordination services to families that are in the Commons community, the Stanton Commons community, which is the area right around the location where we are co-located together. And so as part of that partnership, Martha's Table has early childhood development and child care center, and our participants in this Baby and Me program will have eligibility to access some of those Martha's Table services. And so that's also in addition to food services that are a part of that program, other parental groups that are part of it as well. And those participants in the Baby and Me program will have access, of course, to our medical services as well. So that is an aspect of a partnership that includes early childhood development.
Awesome. We did actually just have another question pop in I want to address, and then we'll move on. The requirements to join. What are the requirements to join our program? I think Abayea, would you speak to that briefly?
Yeah, sure. So if you are pregnant and live in the district, you are welcome to receive medical care with Community of Hope, or your whole family can receive medical care with Community of Hope. Some of our programming is focused on people who are Medicaid eligible, just recognizing that there are particular, needs that are related to economic realities. And so our perinatal care coordination services are for Medicaid eligible patients. However, perinatal care coordinators are available to provide resources and supports to any patient at Community of Hope if necessary. Our home visiting programs are for families that live in wards 5, 7, and 8 of Washington, D.C. Yeah, and I mentioned briefly that we have doula services, and that's part of our Healthy Start program, and that also is for Healthy Start participants who live in wards 5, 7, and 8. But as far as how you can get connected, it's all about starting off with prenatal care with us, and we will get you connected to the services that are available to you.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, we're receiving such kind comments from our peers and our colleagues. Thank you, Cynthia Flynn, who is formerly our Director of Family Health and Birth Center, for your comments and joining for us today. And then Twin Golden, a lovely comment from a fellow midwife. Really, it's great to be surrounded by people who understand the environment that we work in and the challenges that we face. I do want to recognize that we have been joined by a fifth panelist, or another panelist today, and we're so glad that Drew, Ebony's daughter, is here, and she is the sweetest. little pumpkin. So welcome, Drew. You remind us of what this work is all about. So I want to close this up today with just a couple of quick notes. Again, thank you for spending this last hour with us. We've enjoyed this conversation. I am so incredibly proud to work with these women and to get to experience their heart and their passion for their work. So congratulations and thank you very much, Ebony, Abayea. Thank you, Kelly, for your leadership. Thank you again to Care First for their sponsorship of this time together today, and as well as for Optum for helping us create some really nice graphics that capture a really big set of work in a really clear way. We want you to stay involved in our work. We ask that you would just continue to follow our work on our social media channels. If you are interested in making a philanthropic decision here at the end of 2020 or into 2021, we would love for you to consider Community of Hope. If you are interested in learning more about our new and expanded Family Health and Birth Center, as Kelly mentioned, we have a big goal for that campaign, and we would love to talk with you about that. We have some materials that we can share that provide even a lot more insights into it. We do have volunteer opportunities as well as ways to give directly to families. A couple of things. We are doing a holiday cheer campaign. This is for families on the housing side of the organization to ensure every family has a holiday gift card. And then we do accept gently used baby items to support our moms and babies as we are able to accept them with some storage limitations. But again, thank you so much for this time together today. We welcome your questions and your further comments. Please feel free to reach out to us. So glad that you are here today. Bye.